What's up, everybody? I'm Marcus Westbrook. I am a software engineer and a coding mentor at the Apple Developer Academy. I'm so happy to hear about so many people talking about Node.js and JavaScript, my people. But anyways, so a little bit of background information about myself. I went to Michigan State University for a few years, ended up dropping out. Couldn't afford it anymore, it was mad expensive. I also kind of felt like I had ideas that I wanted to get started and get going on, but I didn't, and I felt like school was just like kind of holding me back from getting to the point. So I dropped out, I took the remaining money that I had left, and I tried to start a tech business with it. It was called Nomful. It was supposed to be a restaurant marketing platform for small restaurants and stuff like that. I invested all of my money into it. I worked hard trying to find and build a network of developers, but ultimately, I burned all my cash. Business didn't get built. Job couldn't get done. So I fell on hard times. Was moving from couch to couch, staying with my friends and stuff for a little while. And then I had just reached a brick wall. And I kind of realized at that point that my only way out of that situation was to get a skill that would make me almost invaluable in today's economy, which was learning how to code, because I feel like I can get a job at a lot of different places, pretty much anywhere. I could start my own businesses. I could build my own things. So I went to YouTube University. I downloaded some JavaScript tutorials, and I just started, building stuff and HTML, CSS, JavaScript, front-end projects. And every day I was learning a new topic, and 6 months passed, and I was able to build some pretty cool stuff. So I ended up meeting this guy who was he cut grass on my block, and he needed a website. So I made him a website. That was my very first project. He paid me $100. I still have the check for it. And to me, that $100 felt like $1 million, because I realized that this was my path forward. So fast forward, I found out about the Apple Developer Academy. It's a school 10-month program teaching iOS development, the iOS ecosystem, and I started a software engineering boot camp called Springboard at the same time. Finished both programs in a year, and upon graduation from the Apple Academy and my Springboard boot camp, I got a contract with an ex-NFL player to build a emotional management tracker for students in the Seattle school system. So I did that, and then I was offered a full-time mentor position at the Apple Academy, and then my life's trajectory pretty much shot up from there. And that's how I'm here today to, be in front of you lovely people. I love being a mentor at the Apple Academy, and as far as what I got next coming up, me and a couple of my colleagues, one Nicholas Gordon, who will be giving a presentation later today, are starting a development studio. Right now, you can find us at detroit-devs.net. And you can drop us a line if you have any project inquiries about a website or app or stuff like that. But that's just a little bit about me. So today, we're going to talk about how to build a REST API. So API stands for Application Programming Interface. It is essentially a way for computers to talk to each other and share resources between each other. Now, there's like 4 different kinds of APIs. You have your public APIs that are pretty much open to everybody. You have your private APIs that are like pretty much used for internal reasons for business. So businesses have their own APIs that they use for processing their own stuff. That's what internal APIs are for. And then you have partner APIs that might have some account system that you have to log into to get access to their APIs and stuff like that. And then I think finally is a composite API. And a composite API is just like a bunch of APIs or a few APIs that work together to complete a process or make a process more efficient or something. Now, APIs are also used to access resources on another computer by sending a request. There are 4 main kinds of requests. There are GET requests that allow you to simply retrieve some information from a resource. There are POST requests where you're basically sending data to another resource. There is a PUT request that is essentially updating data or editing of some resource. And then finally, deletion is if you want to delete some data, you would send a delete request. REST stands for Representational State Transfer. It is an architectural pattern for designing APIs. But there are also other ones. There's RPC, which is a remote procedural call, which basically is an API that sends parameters to another computer and invokes a process, essentially. And then you have SOAP, which is Simple Object Access Protocol, which is pretty similar to a REST API. But from what I understand, they normally work with more XML kinds of data, and they are used for more internal APIs. As they are more better used for like higher security, things like that. All right. Why should you care? Well, building an API allows you to build a service. Many of them sell and give you information for free, but a lot of them, charge. So you could have an API with, keeping track of sports stats or something like that, and you could charge people to sell that information, which they could use for their own applications and such. Another important reason is it can be used to power client applications. So if you have a front-end app, you could use an API to basically manage and facilitate the data transfer between the back-end and your client application. And then finally, they power a lot of your favorite apps already. Like if you're using your weather, the weather app on your phone, if you use GPS, all of those things are APIs. They're computers sending information to another computer, essentially. All right. Oh, I think now. Okay. How does it work? So this is a little diagram that basically shows the process of a REST API in which you have a client that sends a request to like the middleman, which is the API, and then that finally sends a request to the server, and then the server, sends its response back. Example I like to use a lot is that of a restaurant. So if you go to a restaurant and you're trying to get some food, you're not just about to hop in the kitchen and start talking to the chef. You're gonna get kicked out. What you would do is you would sit down at a table, and then the server would take your order, and then that order goes to the chef finally, and then he cooks up your meal and he sends it back to you. And that's essentially how the process works. So you send a request for some kind of data or some resource. The API takes that, sends it to the backend, handles what you need, sends it back to the client, and you're all satisfied. Now, we're going to jump into a brief demo of how to build a REST API. So I'm gonna imagine you are a teacher and you're trying to keep track of the students in your classroom. So you wanna build a backend that will store students, that will allow you to retrieve their information, that will allow you to update and delete their information. And I'm just gonna demo all that out real fast. All right, sweet. So right now I just got a project in Xcode. I'm going to create a new Node project. I'm just gonna skip past all this stuff. Doesn't matter, not important, cool. And then we gotta install some dependencies. So one of the most popular web frameworks is Express. So we're gonna download that. And get that all saved. All right, so at this point, we've got our web framework downloaded. We have this little JSON file that just has a couple, is an array of just a few student objects in it. So this is the data that we're essentially gonna be managing. This is our mock database. And now we just basically have to create an entry point for our routes. So I'm gonna make an index.js file, not there. Bam. And then the first thing that we have to do is we have to import our web framework into our app. So Express. And we're basically going to create that import now. So to require Express. Come on now. All right. And then I'm going to make from that an instance of our actual app. So I'll name this app, and then we'll just call Express from here. All right. And then I'm going to define a port number. So when we start our server, we're opening a line of communication basically, and we just have to give it the number or the address that it's going to open up on. So we'll just start one on port. We'll just do 3001. And then I'm going to bring in the student object from our JSON file. Right there. Require. And then do a // should be here, students, cool beans. All right, so basically now we've got everything imported, we've got our app and everything set up. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're going to make a function that basically starts our server. So we've got our app up here, we'll do an app.listen. And this is going to tell our computer that we are opening a port, or we want it to listen on a port 3001. And to know that that's successfully happening, we'll add a little callback function that will print something to the console when it's done. So we'll do server is running on port. All right, cool. So now I should be able to basically run this file, do node index.js, and we should see some sort of, the server's running on 3001. So bam, we got our server started. I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger too. All right. So our server's running now, our server started, and basically what we can start doing is we can start creating our first route and just see what it returns and what we get back. So to create our first route, everything starts from the app, and then the first route we're gonna create is a GET request. So we're gonna try to retrieve some data from our students array. So we'll do app.get for the name of the type of endpoint. And this / right here is basically where the endpoint at which you'll find that data. So whatever the address of the website is going to be where you find this data, or where this route connects to essentially. So, and then in here, we have parameters for our request and response. So the request and response is a part of each cycle of sending a web request and retrieving something. You have the request that's being sent, and you have the response that's coming back. So inside here, we'll add our function. And what you always definitely want to do when you're writing an API is you want to have some error handling, because lots of things can go wrong at any time, and you want to be able to catch what's happening and debug it. So I'm going to add a try catch here. And we'll catch the error if one happens, and we'll just return that. We'll return it as a response with a status code of 200, or 500 rather. So I'm sure you've all gone to a web page before and seen like internal server error 500 or something like that. So there's essentially different status codes that mean different things. 500 usually means there was a server error. 404 usually means you were looking for a resource and it wasn't found. So if in the context of this situation, we just want to say if there's an error, we're going to respond with a status code of 500. And the importance of this is to just give greater context to what's going on to the user that may be seeing it, and to help you as a developer. So we'll just put a message inside here. And we'll return the message of the error if we get one. Now inside here, our first endpoint, we're just going to respond with the status code of 200. Status 200 means it's okay, everything's fine. And then we're gonna do a send, and we'll send just a message, quick response, what up, though? All right, my favorite greeting. So now what I should be able to do is, also know I'm not running, for those who know, I'm not running, Node daemon, so I'm going to be stopping and restarting my server a lot. Didn't think about that ahead of time. Tips for next time. But I'm going to hop into my browser now, and I should be running on localhost 3001. So if I go to localhost 3001 /, I get my response back. So now I know my server's up and running, and it's sending me a response to this address. So now we can start getting to the point. Get to the point. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to try to return, as the teacher, the first thing we want to do is we want to return the collection of students in our database, right? So we'll go back, and to save time, I'm going to just copy this, paste it down here, and then we'll say that this endpoint route is students, and it should give us all of our students essentially. So instead of this .send, now we're going to do a .json, and then we will return our students array that exists up here. I'll name this students. There we go. All right. Start that server up. And now I should see an array of students. Let's see. Oh, I'm not going to /students. The new endpoint that I just created. There we go. So basically, this is our JSON being served from the file we made before that we imported into our routes. I can do this prettier and make it look a little more readable. And there's our student objects, basically, all right? So now, we have the ability to retrieve all of our students. So let's say I want to look at a specific student that, is coming up in the class, and I want to check out his information to find out all of his details. So what I'll do is I will make another get route because I want to get that student, and I'll send this one to /students /student, and then I'm going to add a parameter that simply takes the ID. So what this will allow me to do is I can pass in data to the URL, and I can retrieve that and use that information to look up or filter through information in my backend. So now, instead of doing this, I'm going to try to extract the ID from the parameters of the URL. And then I want to create a value to store the student. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that array and I'm going to filter over it. And pass in a condition where the student that I want extracted is equal to the ID that I'm passing into it, basically. Then I can say if student length is greater than 0, something like that. And then if my student array essentially has a student in it, then I will want to return that student with a status code of 200 because everything should be gravy. And then what I can do is just simply return Student. Oh, this is an object and it shouldn't be. All right, okay. So if my newly filtered student array has a student in it, which should only be the one student that matches the ID that I filtered it over, it should just return that student. Else, we're gonna handle that by saying, return with the status code of 404, which means that the resource that we were looking for, the student, wasn't found. And then we'll just add in a message if that's the case. All right, then everything else here should be good. So what I'm going to do to test this out is I'm actually going to use Postman, /student/ID. So with this, I can basically mirror if I had a client app, and sending it a GET request that contained the ID of the student. So one of the students has an ID of 2, so we're gonna try to return Mary. So all I do here is just pass in the parameter for the ID, and then it should return, cannot get student. Let's go. All right, and localhost 3001. Link this to app.get. Hold up a second. I'm gonna guess it's because I didn't refresh everything. Let's try it again. There we go. There's Mary. So we got Mary, age 15 with an ID of 2. That ID of 2 comes up obviously because I passed her ID into the URL over here. So my code just grabbed it from the parameters and used that in the rest of my code to filter through it and return the student. All right, so what if some new student enters the classroom and now we want to add them to our array, all right? Then we have to do a post request. We have to send some data from our created student to our backend to be saved. So we're gonna go back over to our code and we'll create a new route, but instead of it being app.get, it's gonna be app.post. Right, and we'll send this to create student. Oops. And instead of that, what we're gonna do is we're going to extract the new student from the body of the request that's being sent. So we'll access that from the request object. So request.body should give us that new student. And then what we can do is we can students.push the new student. And then what we can do is just simply return a response of 201. 201 means a new resource was created. We're creating a new student on our backend, basically. .json, and then we'll return our students array, which should contain our new student in it. So if I copy this, right, we're gonna switch this over to a post request, change our endpoint to /create student. These, and then we're gonna add Timothy to our students array. Timothy just joined the class. So a post request with a student object in the body sent to /create student. Not gonna make the same mistake twice, gonna make sure I restart that server. Bam. So, oh, not exactly. What is this? We got null. So, what I'm going to assume is happening is my students array is set to const. So now let's see. All right, let's try it again. Oh, nope, still returning null. Why is it returning no? So post request sent to localhost 3001, create student. We got everything in here. Why is this returning null? We should get it from the body. Let's go back up here. Students is in there. Students.push. Why are you returning no? It's even more hilarious because I did this several times over, and like normally I would just get an error message, and now I'm just getting null, so it's like wonderful timing to get an unexpected outcome. Why? Let's see. Let me check some stuff here. No problems there. No problems there. Timothy. Oh, Timothy, why are you doing this to me? Huh. App.post /create student. Bam. Request response cycle. We got a try catch here. We access the body of a request to extract a new student. We simply add that student into our students array, and then we should be able to return it. But why aren't you returning? I don't want to keep coming on no. Oh. In the interest of time, I'm going to keep it pushing. I don't know why this is happening right now. My brain is nothing's clicking right now. So I'm going to keep it pushing. So we were unable to add Timothy through our array. But what we're going to do instead is we're going to delete a student from our array. So we're just going to create another route. Oh, not Mary. And then we're going to do an app.delete for our delete request. And this will simply delete a student. And then how we're going to do this is we're going to pass in an ID parameter like we did for our post request. And then we're going to filter our students array to only have the student that we want to actually delete. Or to have every student but the student that we're trying to delete. So we'll just pass in the student. And we'll do this based off the ID that we're going to pass in. So if it's not equal to the ID that we're passing in, we want to return all those students. That'll get us everything but the student. And then we'll set our students array equal to our newly filtered array. And then respond with the status code. All right. So now I should be able to, we're gonna make a delete request to delete student. And then we will pass in an ID. Oh wait, I did that wrong. So we now need to pass in a parameter for the ID. And we can do something similar. So we'll get rid of John since he's got an ID of 1. All right. Can I delete? Did not restart that server. So we're gonna do that. And then student is not defined. Ooh. Well, at least now we know our error handling is working. So this is a good example of why it's important to have good error handling in. That error.message that down here is returning that. So now I have some idea of what's going on. Student is not defined. It should be students.filter. All right. So now, Timothy's gone, thank goodness. So that is essentially, well, I guess there's actually one more. What if I want to update a student's data that already exists in my database? So there's one more we got to get through, and we're going to update one of our remaining students. We're going to update Mary. So we're going to make one last route, and this is going to be a put request. And we'll say this one is called edit student. And of course, in order for us to get some information to identify which student we need, we got to pass in some sort of parameter. So we'll grab that ID from the params. Get the newly updated student data from the body of the request. And then we're going to do a filter to find the specific student. Pass in student. And then we want to find the student that is equal to the ID that we're going to pass into it. And then we'll just do some checking just in case, you know, that student, we pass in an ID and that student doesn't exist. We want to have something that handles that. So we'll just check and make sure that there's actually a student in our array that we're filtering. And then once we know that that's the case, we can access that student. And we're just going to access all of his different properties. And then finally, we will, once we've updated the student's data, we're going to return the new student. Or the same student with the updated information. All right. Else. Because we have to handle what if we pass in the ID and that student doesn't exist in our backend. We'll say resource not found with the status code, and then we'll just return a message that says student not found. Cool. So, all right. So we're gonna say it's Mary, and Mary currently has an ID of 2. So, well, Mary currently has an age of 15. Let's say, I don't know, it's a whole year later, and now she's 16. So we're gonna change Mary's age to 16. And we will change our endpoint to edit student. And then Mary has an ID of 10, so that's what we have to pass in there to find her. And then we'll change it to a put request. And now, student not found. What? Oh, wait a second. I believe I passed in the wrong ID. So now, cannot read properties of undefined reading name. Oh, it's live coding, bro. Updated student.name. Updated student.age. So I should get the updated student. I should filter through based off the ID. And then as long as there's a student in it, it should exchange those values. Let's try this. Read properties of undefined reading name. Put request to edit student. Mary has an ID of 2, age 16. Cannot read properties of undefined reading name. Name is undefined. Why is name undefined? Name is Mary. All of these have a name property. Read properties of undefined reading name. Updated student.name. Updated student. Updated student. Any. Name, age. Should filter over it. Mary, passing the ID, edit student. Localhost 3001. Properties of undefined. You keep saying it's a date. Cannot read properties of undefined reading name. All right, I'm about to try a little bit of error handling on the fly. Just to at least make sure that my data is being passed in. Okay, so I'm getting undefined from my console.log here, so that means that the object that's supposed to be coming from the body is undefined, and that's where my error is coming from. But why though? It's right here in the body. I definitely overlooked something. Content type application.json params. It's a number. Why isn't it sending? Ooh. Cannot patch. It's not a patch request, it's a pull request. Oh boy. It's an app.put edit student under ID. JSON. Why are you in the body? All right, let's see. Let me get this one more go. The thing about coding, y'all, for the coders out there, I'm sure you know, stuff can and will always go wrong. And it's going wrong. So I was not able to, for whatever reason, the student that I'm trying to extract from my body is showing up undefined. Why? right now in this moment, I don't know. But I'm not going to waste any time, any more time trying to fix it. But essentially what would have happened is, or what was supposed to happen was, I would have extracted the student from the body here, and it simply would have used the ID to filter through my array of students to find the student that I'm trying to update. And then once I found that student, I would simply be exchanging that student's data, the one that was stored in the array, with the updated student that I passed in for my request, all right? So that is essentially how you create a REST API. Sorry for the bugs, but bugs happen. I did this like 2 times over, but as will happen with code demos, sometimes stuff goes wrong. Now, is there any questions about APIs, about REST APIs, about the process, anything like that? What's up?
Actually, there's 2 questions.
Yep.
So my first question is, do you, I guess this, you being in the field and things of that nature, have you seen an increase in demand for people wanting APIs created?
That's a good question. Yes. I mean, well, there's always, if you look at job boards and job postings and stuff like that for developers, there's always companies out there hiring a back-end developer, hiring somebody to work on an API of some sort. And I think that something that's also really powerful is the ability to create an API is power in itself. An API can be a business that you run on your own as well also. So yes, there's lots of companies out there always hiring backend developers, always hiring for APIs. Pretty much any service out there, any client app at some point, if it's dealing with data, if it's data driven, is going to need an API. So we're getting more and more into today's era of technology is already data-driven. It's only going to become increasingly more so. So there's always going to be a need for somebody that knows about the process of exchanging that data between computers and networks and stuff like that.
Okay,
so yeah.
The question is, what's your thoughts on GraphQL?
Ooh, GraphQL. Have not worked with it before. Have not worked with it before, my friend. All right. Anybody else? What's up?
So I've heard of RESTful as well. So I have REST and RESTful. Can you tell me the difference between the 2 APIs?
So I believe a RESTful API is just an API that prescribes to or conforms to the REST architectural protocol. So they're essentially the same thing. It's just saying that this format or the way it was designed is RESTful or is a REST API. All right. What's up?
The different types of requests that your API is able to accept. So in there you have what if you want people to be able to make you don't want them to be able to use a delete call, but you have to let them create different things that get added to the database.
So you're essentially creating, when you make an API, you're essentially creating the functionality or the endpoints for what you want the person that's using it to be able to do. So if you don't have a delete route, then they don't really have a way of sending a request to delete a resource. If you just want them to be able to post something to your database, you just create a route that allows them to do that, basically. Yep.
So I know you got get, put, post, delete. What would you use patch for?
I believe patch is for updating as well, but off the top of my head, I'm not sure. Let me see. I believe it's also, patch request is also used for, okay. So a patch request is also it's pretty much similar to a put request. The whole idea of a patch request is to modify a resource, essentially. So they share the same functionality at the end of the day to update a resource. But I believe A put request actually, okay, so here's the difference. A patch request is if you want to update a part of something, and a put request is if you wanted to update a resource with a whole new thing. That makes sense? Okay. Anybody else? All right, y'all. Thank you for your time. I'm Marcus. It's been wonderful to be here. It's been an honor. Thanks to Mac and Jessica for giving me this opportunity. Have a good day. See y'all later.